For years, I lived in an echo chamber where my story was the only one that mattered. Every setback was someone else's fault. My boss, my friends, my family. Blame became my armor, but it weighed me down and kept me stuck. I replayed conversations, building my case as the victim, never seeing my own role. The narrative of blame is seductive. It lets us avoid responsibility and the hard work of change. But the world rarely bends to our will, and so we wait, growing more bitter and entrenched. I felt like I was running on a treadmill, exhausted, but going nowhere. Anger felt like action, but it was just noise, drowning out the quiet whisper that maybe the common denominator in my problems was me. That thought was terrifying, so I'd turn up the volume on my blame-filled stories, but the whisper never left. It waited for a moment of silence to be heard. Eventually, I couldn't ignore it any longer. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I was venting to a friend about work, expecting sympathy. Instead, she gently asked, "And what was your part in it?" The question stunned me. I had no answer. For the first time, I saw myself clearly. Someone who avoided conflict, procrastinated, and expected others to read my mind. I realized I'd contributed to the very problems I complained about. It wasn't a relief. It was devastating. My identity as the victim crumbled. If I wasn't wronged, who was I? The armor of blame fell away, leaving me exposed but honest. The truth was clear. I was part of the problem, and that meant I could be part of the solution. The next day, I woke up with a vulnerability hangover, shame, fear, and a fragile clarity. Shame replayed every mistake, urging me to rebuild my walls. Fear told me that if I was part of the problem, I had to be part of the solution, and that was terrifying. It meant hard conversations, setting boundaries, risking being misunderstood. The comfort of my old story seemed safer than change, but beneath the fear was relief. If I was part of the problem, I wasn't helpless. I had agency and power. The key to my cage was in my own hand. Accepting this truth meant choosing courage over comfort, kindness over shame. The vulnerability hangover was painful, but it was a sign I was finally waking up. Growth had begun. Realization was just the start. Real change meant action. I began by changing my language, owning my needs instead of blaming others. I practiced staying curious in tough conversations, listening to understand, not just to respond. My first attempt was with my manager. "I need to understand your expectations better." The world didn't end. In fact, things improved. I started setting boundaries, saying no when needed, and owning my mistakes without spiraling into shame. Each small step built my confidence. There were setbacks. Old habits die hard, but now I recognized them and chose a different path. I learned to be gentle with myself, practicing compassion on hard days. Change wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up and trying again. I chose to be the solution, not just the critic. The arena was messy, but it was where real growth happened, and I kept stepping in. My life isn't perfect, but I'm no longer a passive victim. I'm the author. Owning my part made me powerful, not weak. This shift built trust and honesty, especially with myself. Vulnerability, I learned, is the birthplace of courage, love, and growth. If you feel stuck or wronged, know you're not alone. Get curious about your story. Look for your fingerprints, not to blame, but to reclaim your power. The moment you see your part is the moment you find the solution. The path to a wholehearted life begins with owning every part of your story. It takes courage to look in the mirror, but on the other side is freedom. You have the strength to be your own solution.